All right, the last tool that I want to quickly cover in this intro section isn't exactly a formula topic per se, but it's a tool that we'll use hand in hand with our formulas and functions to make them more dynamic, powerful, and user-friendly. It's called data validation. And the whole idea behind data validation is that you can restrict the values that a user can enter into a specific cell based on a number of different factors. Things like the number type, whole number versus decimal. You can assign a value range or use logical operators like between, less than, greater than, equal to, etc. You can restrict based on a list of specific items, based on dates or times, text length, and even custom restrictions that are based on your own formulas. So a couple quick examples here. This is what the data validation dialog box looks like. In this case, we're restricting the input of our down payment percentage cell to a decimal between 0 and 1, and that equates to a percentage between 0 and 100%. In this second example here, we're restricting based on a list, and the source of that list comes from cells M2 through M4, and what that does is create a little drop-down menu right there in the term length cell where we've applied this validation rule, containing only the 3 values in our list. Now, fun fact, you can actually customize your own warnings and error alerts, which is a lot of fun. With that, let's jump into Excel and take a few minutes and practice some of these data validation rules. All right, so we're back in Excel. We're in the Section 2 Formulas 101 workbook, and I'm actually going to jump back to the Auditing Tools tab here, where we have our property calculator. And remember, we've got some hard-coded cells here that serve as inputs into our formulas like cash to close, monthly expenses, and so on. And the first one I want to focus on is the term length, which is the length of the loan in terms of years. And right now there's no restriction, there's no validation rule applied. So a user can literally type anything in here. They could say, I want a 17-year loan, or a 2-year loan, or a 357.25-year loan. It doesn't matter. It's like the Wild West. You can type anything you want. And that's not really realistic because in the real world, there are certain types of loans or term lengths that are really the standards. And let's say there are 3, 10 years, 15 years, or 30 years. And we don't want users to be able to type anything that they want. Well, this is a great opportunity to use the list option in the data validation menu. So let's go ahead and change this term length to something like 30. And with that cell selected, you're going to go into your data menu and your data tools category and look for this icon here. It's the data validation option. It may look different in different versions of Excel, but it should have a similar icon there. And we can click it to open up the dialog box. And right now, by default, every cell will say, we're going to allow any value. All we need to do here is drop in and say, you know what, we don't want any value. We want a list of values. And the source defines what that list looks like. You could either type your values into cells and then reference those cells, like we saw on the slide, or you could actually just type those values right here, separated by commas. 10, 15, 30, press OK. And see how it added that little caret, that drop down? That created my drop-down menu, and now users are restricted to those 3 particular values. Now, just to show you an example, we could place those same 3 values right here in cells. You could put this anywhere, and then we can go back into data validation, and instead of typing it in, we could remove that manual list, use the picker option, and select, in this case, cells N2 through N4, press OK, and we get the exact same end result. So that's a good example of using a data validation list. The second demo that I want to show you is using that decimal between 0 and 1. And to do that, we're going to add a rule to our down payment percentage because you can't put less than 0% down and you wouldn't want to put more than 100% down. So it's a good opportunity to use that between logic here. So we're going to go back to data validation. This time we want to allow a decimal, and the minimum is going to be 0, and the maximum is going to be 1. Again, that equates to 0 to 100%, And check this out. We can actually go into our error alert. The input message is just going to do kind of a pop-up as you hover over the cell. You can play with that if you'd like. In this case, we're just going to focus on the error alert. And you can put anything you want here. This is the title of the box that will pop up. So you could write something like, "I'm disappointed in you." And then the error message, if you want something a little bit more descriptive, you could say, "Enter a value between 0 and 1 and press OK." So that's locked in. Now we can test it out and say, all right, I'm going to put 10% down. That looks good. I'm going to put 80% down. Looks good. Now let's try one that we know is outside of our range, like 120%. Boom, there you go. We got our warning box. It says, "I'm disappointed in you. Enter a value between 0 and 1. So you can go ahead and retry. Type something that's a little bit more realistic, like 20%, and there you go. So quick crash course in data validation, really useful tool. I use it all the time, especially helpful when you're building things like reports and dashboards.